getting connected. Welcome, Danny. Thanks for joining us. Before we get into it, let me do some opening remarks. I'm Albert, CEO of Bitcoin Startup Lab. Welcome to the Who's Who and a Founder's Journey into Bitcoin interview series. The reason why we've come together as a community to do this is to celebrate innovation and significant achievements on Bitcoin so that we reinforce and grow the innovation culture on Bitcoin. Significant achievements on Bitcoin are things that were done for the first time ever or setting new records to push forward the innovation frontier on Bitcoin. This show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Startup Lab. We're a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Also, our media partner, BTC Inc., the parent company of Bitcoin Magazine, the top media on Bitcoin, and CryptoSlate, a crypto-agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And of course, a big thank you to all of our teams and all the guest speakers that have come together to make this show possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. So today, our special guest is Danny Yang, CEO and co-founder of MetaGood and On-Chain Monkeys. It's the first 10K collections on Ordinals and first to launch collection with recursion technology. So Danny, let's jump into it. So I think the people that know you as a serial entrepreneur, and that's definitely a part that we're going to get into. But before that, can you share with us what you did before becoming a founder? Like, where did you go to university? What did you do? Any side hustles or businesses before you did your first startup? Let's
Sure.
let's get to know your origin.
Yeah. Well, I guess a long time ago, I studied, physics. I was interested in, being, I guess, a scientist, perhaps. Then I went to grad school for computer science because I just loved, what was possible. Actually, I wanted to do AI. I wanted to make, the robots, the smart agents that could, be like a human. So I went to Stanford, got my computer science PhD. But this was during the time of the .com boom and bust, basically. So a bunch of my colleagues, left to do startups during this time. In fact, when I got to Stanford, Google was still on campus. Larry and Sergey were still on Stanford campus, about to start Google. And I also met some of my friends who I later on even now work with crypto. And so, for example, Bobby Lee was a Stanford grad, and he was at Stanford when I came over, and also met his brother Charlie Lee, who moved out here after he graduated from MIT. So we used to hang out and play poker and talk about startups during that period. And but I did finish my PhD, and then I joined a startup. So that's kind of, I guess, my start to before being a founder, right? I worked at a startup for almost 4 years, and that was a great learning experience. Different from academia, because previously I'd been in academia, right? Getting my PhD. So working in a startup was, I think kind of the great kind of preparation to doing a startup. And there, the startup I was in was called like.com, and worked on computer vision, basically AI for actually the company was about analyzing consumer photos. This was at the time when digital, basically people could take a bunch of digital photos, but just at the start of that. Like now we take for granted that on any given day we might even take 1,000 photos, right, with our phone. But back then, your entire a person's entire digital image library was probably 1,000 photos. So
wow, what year was this?
2005.
Wow,
was
how time flies.
Yeah. So I worked at Star for a couple of years. Actually, Google acquired it eventually, and that's when I left to start my own company. And I did my own big data startup, basically from 2009 to 2012. And I actually moved to Beijing, China, to do that startup because I also wanted to experience the scene there because China was actually had a very strong tech like internet startups ecosystem at that time. So then I worked there for a couple of years, and then in 2012 I moved back to the US and I was looking for another startup to do. So I was back in the SF Bay Area, and that's when and over these years, I've been hanging out with Bobby and Charlie Lee. So Bobby actually moved to Shanghai and worked there for a couple of years while I was in Beijing. So we see each other quite a bit. And then back when I was in the Bay Area, that was when Bobby wanted to. So Charlie was doing, he did Litecoin, and they're very into Bitcoin. He let's see, Bobby
You
wanted
did Litecoin. What did you do with Litecoin?
He created it.
Okay, wow. Okay, so Charlie created Litecoin, and when you say Bobby, is this the same guy who launched like the first Bitcoin or the biggest Bitcoin exchange in China?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
right.
BTC China, Bobby was the CEO and founder. Yeah. So he approached me when I moved back to US. Was like, well, come back to China. Let's start a Bitcoin exchange, right? We're gonna, start in basically in China. I didn't want to move back to China, and also the my feeling was that regulations in China would be difficult with Bitcoin long term. So I ended up starting my own Bitcoin exchange.
Well, hold on. All right. So what year did you call that?
That was 2013.
Wow. Okay. So you basically predicted the future because like 8 years later, they did a really hard crackdown. But okay, keep going.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't hard. I mean, you could if you understood China, but
yeah.
So we actually started. So another friend. We're all kind of Stanford buddies. Alex Liu and I started MyCoin, a Bitcoin exchange focused on the Taiwan market. So we're headquartered there. We had good banking relations. So it was basically as a fiat to Bitcoin exchange, properly done. Worked with the banks in Taiwan. Very legitimate business, and it's still 10 years later, it's still the largest, crypto company in Taiwan. So that was my start to basically, well, first going through startups, like doing a couple myself, and then starting the Bitcoin exchange. And then and that's how I got into crypto too, through, Bobby and Charlie and Alex, who was my co-founder for the.
Okay, can we pause here for a second, Danny?
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing that so far it's like you said MyCoin, which became the biggest crypto company in Taiwan. And then we're about to get into your other success cases after that. Now, when you from the time you did the computer vision to when you went to Beijing, I guess computer vision and MyCoin between there, you said there's 2 startups.
Yeah, so I did the one in China for 3.5 years, and then I started another data company, Score Data, right when I moved back to the US in 2012. But after a year, I decided to start the Bitcoin company. So that company, my co-founder for that one, it is still running. So that's a big data B2B business. The same, actually similar. I also started data company. The one that I started in China was also a data company or AI data company, B2B.
How did that one do?
That one, we shut it down after 3.5 years.
That was your first startup, right?
That was my first startup. Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's the one you cut your teeth on.
Yeah.
Right? Like let's hear about that one. What's the tough thing about that one? Like in the first one, usually does end. It just becomes like tuition, right? It's like tuition, as we say.
Yeah.
Like you
Well,
gotta pay your fees before you succeed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that one. It's part of excitement. Also, is just go to China and learn a new place in market. But yeah, but there was but how we ran it was basically it was your typical tech startup where agile programming, a smaller team, very technical team, building a technical product, a big data product. We actually had built the largest patent database in the world at that time. We basically scraped the world's patent data, and we're selling AI analysis on patents, which was maybe a little ahead of time. Like that data is actually quite valuable. Another thing we did at that time was we were like that was one of the products, but we also pivoted to because we're analyzing patent data, right? We could see, we understood a lot about companies and maybe company structure. So it was a kind of an early form of managing company assets, based on like patents. But anyway, it was we're I think one of the things was pivoting and kind of adjusting to finding product market fit. That's the hardest thing to do, like get product market fit. Like certain for a startup, right? It's about minimizing your risk, right? So there's a few types of risk. There's team risk, technology risk, market risk, financial risk, regulatory risk. And some things you can control pretty well, like team risk and technology risk, you can control, right? Team by who you hire, technology by the type of technology you use and being experts in the tools. But market risk is the biggest one, where how do you minimize that? Well, you need to find product market fit, and so that's always hard. So basically trying to address market risk, first and foremost. I think you're muted, Albert. I can't hear you.
Oh, no, so
Oh, there you
I
go.
think thanks for it. I think that's half of the fun of doing a startup is learning how to get to product market fit. I sort of consider that as a transitioning point within a startup and then to like an actual company, right? Product market fit. And so I find that there's like a disproportionate amount of time that on the first startup where we're learning everything for the first time. So it's just the cost, the overhead for learning these things is very high in terms of time and resources. But then the funny thing is after we learn them, the next time we do it, it's like only 1/10, right? The resource and time. And then it keeps compressing until it sort of just becomes walking or breathing, right?
Yeah. And also figuring out the timing of when to do things. I think with more experience, you can basically decide to be in the right place to do something at the right time. Yeah,
it's better just to be half a step ahead of the market. If you're 2 steps ahead, you're gonna be burning a lot of money. Yeah. That's great insight. Any other insights on that first experience before we move on?
Let's keep going. So
let's keep going. All right. So that was the one you cut your teeth on, and you did a second startup right before you did the MyCoin, which became the biggest in Taiwan. What was the second one? It was another data.
So after MyCoin, so MyCoin is MAICOIN. So it's like not MY, MAI. Then after that, I started Blockseer, which was focused. So because I had interest, and actually because I have interest in big data and AI and analytics, and that's also the reason I was so fascinated with Bitcoin initially, was that you have this open public ledger that you can analyze. It's transparent, right, for everyone to see what is happening. And so the second company, Bitcoin company that I did, was focused on analyzing the Bitcoin ledger, and here also we were talking about product market fit, right? So it's like so this is also very early in the Bitcoin timeframe. In 2015 and even 2014, even while I was working on the previous company, when you look at Bitcoin data, like who actually cares about it? Like who are the customers for that? Because it's actually there are many customers, from like traders to exchanges who need to understand for anti-money laundering, KYC compliance, and for people who perhaps they want to protect themselves from risky transactions or sending to the wrong people, or maybe they were hacked too, and they want to see if they can recover their losses, or even properly report their losses, because how do you know if it's actually a hack or a person just pretending that they lost their crypto, right? So they don't have to pay tax on it. So we built this the system to analyze Bitcoin, and then it's finding product market fit for that. Who would want that? So this was the Blockshare company. In fact, we are one of the first. And also when Ethereum came out, we also analyzed Ethereum. And for Ethereum, we were actually one of for Bitcoin, we're the only pretty much visual analytics tool that people could use. We actually made a free tool that people could use to analyze Bitcoin transactions back many years ago. And then when Ethereum came out, we were also I think pretty much the early and first explorers for Ethereum, and especially on a visual. We had a visual explorer for Ethereum where you could also follow Ether through accounts. And these two are actually very different blockchains, right? One is UTXO model, another is account based with smart contract. That's actually very complicated if you're building a block explorer for Ethereum. So we collaborate with Etherscan back when Ethereum launched to really build the right a block explorer and analytics tools.
Can I jump in here for a second? Yeah, the thought that crossed my mind right now is that all the projects you're doing are very groundbreaking at the time. And how did you know to jump in and dive so deeply into Bitcoin and blockchain at the time, right? I mean, MAI coin, right? My coin, this, what was your what was this deciding moment for you to get into Bitcoin and blockchain? I mean,
I think it's the reason people are excited by Bitcoin to begin with, right? It's and I was building community for Bitcoin with I started a Stanford Bitcoin meetup, and it's just there's a lot of potential for this decentralized peer-to-peer money or payments, or basically what makes Bitcoin special. I think it's why I had conviction to start companies around Bitcoin. But not limited to Bitcoin. I think Ethereum is also quite powerful for their smart contracting ability. Like Vitalik wanted to do this on Bitcoin, but it wasn't possible, years ago. And
well, yeah, I understand. I mean, just the whole this type of cryptography, the things that it unlocks. I mean, when you say makes it special, are you talking about something that potentially, let's say we fast forward 10 years from now, or when cryptography becomes ubiquitous or commonplace in our society or around the world, what's one vision of the world at that time?
Yeah, well, I think one of the big problems, or one of the things that Bitcoin solves, is this thing about trust, right? It's hard to we have to trust some things, but there's some things rather not trust. Like the banks is kind of the big thing. So this decentralized ledger that Bitcoin has means you can have trust in the ledger, but you don't have to trust any big centralized party about that ledger.
I really like how you did not use the word trustless, because I get your point. It's we can't trust the bank, but the Bitcoin ledger is trustworthy, right? I think that's a better way to put it. Is which one do you want to trust more?
It's a trustless, or it's it's a system to you don't have a trust in one centralized authority. You still have to trust that Bitcoin works, right? But it works in a way that you can it's a different trust model. And
I like the way you say that. I'm glad that we're dispelling this word trustless. It's that really keeps a lot of people from coming into Bitcoin. It's actually, we created a more trustworthy platform. Yeah. Than what was existing. So let's just project that out. So if you take that one factor and then you project it out into the future, how is that going to change things? Of course, this is a forward statement. So, use your imagination. There must have been something that went off in your mind, like, wow, like if this became completely full blown and all these applications were built on this, what does the future look like?
Yeah, well, it's around this very trustworthy ledger, right? Bitcoin is a ledger that's very trustworthy based on this UTXO model. And up till recently, it's very hard to do anything else on it. But it did that thing very well, right? You can store your Bitcoin on the fungible token Bitcoin on Bitcoin very well in this very secure ledger model. And what Ethereum solved was, well, or a new model was, well, we can develop applications on Ethereum because of the EVM and the smart contracting. So what happened recently with the Ordinals protocol was it adds a lot more functionality for building apps on top of Bitcoin all of a sudden, but still using the Bitcoin ledger model of UTXOs. So the Ordinals protocol is designed around UTXOs and this Bitcoin ledger. Yet it enables a new kind of programming. It's not the same as EVMs on Ethereum, but it enables certain things that are a lot more powerful in terms of developing apps on Bitcoin now with Ordinals protocol. So that's what's really exciting, today with this new protocol on Bitcoin.
Cool. Yeah. So this is a part of the main event Ordinals. But before we jump into that, because you guys were one of the first teams to pivot or in a sense upgrade to Ordinals, right? But before that, if I understand correctly, you guys had already launched MetaGood and on-chain monkeys, and were you guys the first 10K collection on Ethereum?
No, I would say CryptoPunks is known for being innovating on basically. So NFTs is also a very broad thing, and I think people are starting to try to wrap their heads around, what are different types of NFTs, right? So, CryptoPunks came out with basically 10,000. So ERC 721 didn't exist, right, when CryptoPunks came out in 2017. So they wrote a smart contract which allowed people to trade, and the CryptoPunks contract basically had a hash that represented like all the images. So you could think of Ethereum starting with CryptoPunks even before ERC 721 was a certificate type of system where people can trade certificates on there, basically pointers or references to something that's not on Ethereum but represents ownership of something. So like CryptoPunks was a good example where you have ownership. Basically, you owned a number that represented a CryptoPunk that was stored, elsewhere. And ERC 721 developed after that to make it easier for people to launch NFTs or basically these certificate type of ownership NFTs. All right, because a token URI is a pointer typically to IPFS, but sometimes just to a centralized server. So it's about a certificate. When I create on-chain monkey, I want to make it, which we now call a digital artifact, but at that time the term wasn't used, but was something that was you can own it, which the ERC 721 had that model, right? You own the certificate, but then you want the certificate to actually be complete. And the thing you own is not just a certificate or pointer or something; it's actually the whole thing. So on-chain monkey, when it was created, the ownership and the thing you own was all encapsulated in the smart contract. All right, so that's the completeness part. And then some other properties of digital artifacts that we care about too are permissionless, completeness, or I mentioned completeness, immutability, and what's the other one? There are 5 points, right? Let me just look it up because I can't remember it right offhand. But the thing is that we satisfied all those, right? And so that was kind of significance of on-chain monkey in that it was a digital artifact, right? Before you had a protocol for digital artifacts and Bitcoin ordinals. And And we also did it in a way that was pretty, in terms of like, I think the term now is file size, but it's, being very like Ethereum and Bitcoin, these are all shared utilities, right? It's a open, public good. And so if we spend a lot of basically the blockchain resources to create our digital artifacts, it hurts everyone else, or at least it slows everyone else down. So On-chain Monkey was created with minimal footprint on Ethereum. So actually it was created with one transaction. So basically it was a 10K collection of digital artifacts, and also done in a single very optimized transaction on Bitcoin.
Oh, so that was the first thing like you guys innovated on Ethereum even before you came to.
I would say actually the most, but yeah, it was a whole collection on chain and one transaction. That's what we could explain, I guess, somewhat clearly back in 2021, because people didn't understand the concept of digital artifact, but it is also a original digital artifact, right, on Ethereum. So basically they're ownable, complete, permissionless, immutable, and uncensorable. That was another term, property that I didn't mention, right? But so it's a digital artifact, and there are actually very few digital artifacts on Ethereum even today. So back in 2021, it was one of the first basically 10K digital artifact collections in the world, and done on Ethereum. But now with Ordinals, it's great because we have a protocol designed for digital artifacts.
Okay, so here we go. Here comes the exciting part, right? Because Ordinals just happened like what, 6-7 months ago. Well, it hit mainstream at that time in late January, right? And you guys were on top of it right away. How did you guys know like I mean, I sort of see the pattern. You guys have always been early, but like this time, how did you know? Like, can you walk me through the steps? Like, you must have heard about it last year or something. And then like what made you say, hey, because it's a pretty big move, right? To unplug from Ethereum, which is as we know, has the most users, the most developers, the most liquidity, period, right? Most activity daily. And then go to Bitcoin, where at that time is what, it was 110,000 inscriptions, or even maybe even less when you made the decision.
It was less. It was,
yeah, I mean, we're at 20. Well, we're at 21 million now, right? So that was
no. So we actually inscribed, so
like less than
yeah,
1% of that. What goes through your mind? How did you make the decision? Like, teach us that. Sure, it's like that, your model there.
So we actually inscribed On-chain Monkey, the whole 10K collection, in inscription 2021-9, so 20219. And that number is significant for us because 2021 is a year that On-chain Monkey was first created on Ethereum as a digital artifact, and 9 is the month that it came out. So we were able to kind of match that perfectly. And yeah, that was a quite early.
So that date again? What was that date again? We launched
2021-9. So the year 2021 and 9. So
okay.
So yeah, inscription 20,219 is our 10K collection, and that was the first, because at that point, people were inscribing single basic images, JPEGs, and some people started experimenting with some other formats, but people were not thinking about, well, hey, you can actually do a whole collection, and you have these properties. So what drove us with the idea, actually, here's a protocol for digital artifacts. Like, that is key, right? Like that is the highest value, and type of NFTs. These are kind of your, like, we look at the fungible world or just the currency world, Bitcoin has very different properties than, the US dollar, right? But the US dollar works great on, like credit cards and banking system. But Bitcoin, is Bitcoin because of its property of, decentralization, uncensorable, immutable, all this, and the Bitcoin ledger. And for digital artifacts on Bitcoin with the Ordinals protocol, that's exactly what you get. You basically get all the great properties of Bitcoin for your non-fungible asset. And the digital artifact is made, like, when presented at the program for digital artifact, it makes perfect sense for us to put on-chain monkey on there, because that's what we created on Ethereum. But Ethereum wasn't designed for digital artifacts, right? It's designed for the certificate model. Yeah, so that's it was easy for us to make that leap and see the potential for ordinals.
So, okay, all right. So there's a few things here. So you guys already made that decision on Ethereum, right? To make a digital artifact. It's not pointing to IPFS or like a mutable database, right? And then you said you inscribed the entire collection, what, on 2021-9? Is that 20,199? Or is it 200,000?
The number is 20,219, right? Which is 2021-9.
So that's like 20,000, like basically 20,000 inscription.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So let's do the math here. So we're at over 20 million right now. So 1% of 20 million is what, 200,000. So you basically inscribed it at 0.1% of where, like, the total inscription number. Wow. Okay. So if you inscribed it that soon, early, that puts us what, in February?
Yeah, it was early February.
Okay. Yeah, early February. And so, well, I mean, like, it sort of hit, the announcement was what, January 21st or something like that, or 22nd. So you guys must have knew this before, or did you just crack it out in like 2 weeks? What happened there?
Yeah, and also we did dimensions in February too. So
yeah,
these were things we worked on before, as in, we had these, digital artifacts, or rather the code that could create these digital artifacts. We were working on them for a while, and so we were ready to basically put them onto Bitcoin.
Okay, when you say a while, was this before January 21st of this year?
Well, I mean, Genesis came out in 2021, right? So,
well, not the Ethereum part. I'm just talking about, like, I mean, when did you make that decision to jump, like, and launch?
I would say late January. So in January.
Well, late. All right, so like,
it was
just a few days after it was like announced on social media.
Yeah, around that time frame. Yeah.
Is there a model used to make that kind of decision? Because that's a pretty big decision, right? Because some people are still like, they're still thinking about coming to ordinals, right? like basically within a few days, you guys made the decision. I'm like, the reason why I'm asking is because I noticed that successful serial entrepreneurs, they can be very decisive about things, right? And accurately decisive.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, it's understanding the kind of the model for ordinals, right? The Bitcoin model, and it made sense. Digital artifacts made sense.
Okay, you're basically a believer before. I mean, like, you started on Bitcoin, right? You started the Stanford Bitcoin meetup group, and then you did a biggest Bitcoin exchange, right, in Taiwan, and then you moved over to Ethereum, right? Probably because Bitcoin was not that programmable at that time, right? There's more action on Ethereum, but now that you could do stuff on Bitcoin, it was like, this is the moment we've all been waiting for, right? So it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like, okay, no, okay, I get it. All right, so this is special. So first collection, right, to 10K collection to take such a small footprint on Bitcoin, right? Like, can you give us like an idea of, this is a 10K, and you described it, how big was the file compared to, how big was the footprint compared to, say, like something that was before that?
Yeah, so all the images and metadata was inscribed in 20,000 bytes. So then when you divide out by 10,000 images and metadata, it's only 2 bytes per OCM in terms of how much file storage needed on Bitcoin.
Wow. Okay. So in one block size, what's the maximum amount you could do?
Up to 4 megabytes.
Oh, so you just did a fraction of that.
Yeah. I mean, a typical, like, a reasonably large Bitcoin transaction can be 20 kilobytes, pretty easily with inputs and outputs. So it just looked like another Bitcoin transaction. No one noticed the difference.
So okay, no, I get it. So it's basically a fraction of blocks, but you have like 10,000 there. So I mean, look, I want to understand the motivating factor, right? Because a lot of people just say, oh, whatever, I'm just going to inscribe, right? But then what was your motivating factor to go through all that trouble to, right, to make the footprint so small for a 10,000 collection?
Yeah,
And
well,
because
so
this like internal motivation caused you to become first in this category, right? But what
yeah,
was, but
that
it's
started.
not pain. It's like it's much more difficult.
Yeah, well, that's what started 2 years ago, right? When we launched an Ethereum, before we even launched Ethereum, right? We had to create a collection that was very small footprint, right? That's how we made a digital artifact on Ethereum to begin with.
Mhm.
So that was pretty
What was that
nasty.
important to you?
What's that?
What was that important to you and your
Uh,
team? Yeah.
I mean, it's a because um, digital artifacts on Ethereum or Bitcoin, uh, or that type of art will be a certain. It basically is low footprint art. It's kind of like code golf if you're very technical. It's like being able to write code with the fewest number of bytes, um, and
Uh,
we can create an art form in that sense. So there is going to be a type of generative art on Bitcoin that's all about low small file size, right? That's kind of also like a sort of a trait kind of feature for collectibles too. I think on Bitcoin in particular because it's about digital artifacts. So things are, let's say under a kilobyte in footprint or file size for an inscription, I think will have a certain class of those will have, more value for like all the cool things you can do in the small footprint. And
get
that's
it?
also what we're thinking about when we created, Dimensions, right? The other collection we did in February, which was, if you have a larger footprint, like, the on-chain monkey Genesis footprint was really small, just, a couple bytes for each one. But if you have a larger amount, let's say a kilobyte, then what could you do? And also to show off, what you can do. So because it's programmable and basically recursive inscription, right, is a thing that we knew would be part of a rather important part of Bitcoin because of the power it provided, right? So we were designing that for this Dimensions collection back in February, and so we showed that as when you use recursion, you can make these 3D animated interactive creations, or they're really applications on Bitcoin, right? That you view in your browser or you use your browser for, but it streams right from the Satoshi or from Bitcoin, and so that's what we did with Dimensions.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Simple is beautiful. Simple is beautiful. And I think you guys, I think the market doesn't, well, some part, like a small part of the market knows it, but very soon I think more of the market will join this movement and this simple is beautiful art movement. And yeah, the Dimensions is incredible also. Is it the first 3D animated collection using recursion?
In the way that we did it, yes, right, where you actually, you render it in 3D, like it's a 3D model, and there's lighting and shadow and shade. Yeah, because we had to inscribe, the libraries like 3.js to do this.
Right. So you inscribed the JS library on another inscription, and then
Well, recursion was not enabled yet until June 15th, right? Owners.com didn't have it. So
when did
we
you inscribe it?
in February we
Okay,
inscribed it.
so how did you see that? Like, how did you know that maybe there's a high likelihood that recursion would be activated on June 15th?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
that's like what? It's like 4 or 5 months away, right? But like again, like what's the thought process there?
well, we thought
Share
it
us,
would be
like,
sooner, but it takes time for the protocol to develop. But
okay, so you guys already talked about it. Like maybe you talked with the creators of ordinals, or like
so we had a
how
we,
did you
we had
know?
we started an issue back in February that described generative art on Bitcoin, and it also referenced some other issues that Casey created. So recursion is one of the issues or one of the discussions that Casey actually started, I think in November or December last year, right?
Hmm.
So we knew that was also part of his thinking. Because when you understand it, it just makes sense that that is how you want to design a protocol or a system.
Yeah, I mean, it increases the programmability by a lot, and I mean, this is amazing. So before we jump into recursion, what's you talk about dimensions. I'm a holder, proud holder, but there's only 300. When are the others coming out? I'm sure a lot of people are waiting.
Yeah. Well, the next step is Genesis. So we inscribed Genesis in February too, right? Early February, in the very early inscription, 20,219. But the parent-child, collection provenance feature is still, being worked on. So Dimensions actually uses it, but it uses it, but the wallets and every, many platforms have trouble supporting it because no one else is using it because it's a new feature that is not an official part of Ordinals yet. So Genesis is kind of in that boat of, well, we want to create this parent-child collection in the best possible way because we have all 10,000 inscribed in that 2021 9 inscription. Now we want to distribute it to the holders, but we want to do it in a way where people won't lose them. It won't be stuck in wallets, which happened with Dimensions. Like Dimensions was stuck in people's wallets for weeks. Even now, like 2 months after the launch, it's still somewhat stuck in the wallets because of basically, I guess it's still, wallets are catching up with the innovation that's happening with the Ordinals protocol. So yeah, next up is Genesis. We're gonna allow the distribution of Genesis, that inscription 2021-9, to the holders.
Okay, so when you say Genesis, you're talking about that first 10K digital artifact collection on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Okay, and now
On
what
Bitcoin.
they're migrating. It's like
Yeah.
it's like their exodus to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it'll be a burn one way. People have to burn there. So it's not an increase in supply. It's basically there's 10,000 Genesis that were created on Ethereum, and people can move them over from Ethereum to Bitcoin.
By burning the Ethereum one.
That's right.
And when is this going to go on? This is going to be.
We're working on that now. So as soon as we can get it all ready.
All right. So that's
and also partly on kind of the Ordinals protocol too, on some of what's going on there. But it'll be an exciting move.
all right. Cool, man. Excellent. That is exciting. It sounds like it's right around corner. Now, because we have some people tuning in who are going to be part of our hackathon coming up. By the way, thank you for supporting that. It's gonna we're in touch with your marketing team, right, to figure out the price structure, but where do you have your logo up here? So
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and thanks for organizing that. That'll be a great event.
Yeah, thanks for your support. I mean, right now in just to confirm prizes, we're over 100K. So it's US dollars. Like some of it will be paid in different types of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency, but it's very substantial. I mean, we even have a $50,000 agnostic prize for any kind of Bitcoin technology innovation. Right. So that puts us squarely at the very top by many levels in terms of prize size for Bitcoin hackathons this year. So we're also expecting a large turnout. Now, with your prizes, I think it's probably going to have to do with something innovation on ordinals, right? And maybe even with recursion. So can you give us some like insights on what does recursion unlock? Like this recursion method on ordinals, like what are some of the things that you'd like to see come to life during the hackathon? Because this hackathon is not just a 1 week hackathon, it's a one online hackathon, and people could program for almost even a month. So
yeah, I think in terms of inscriptions as I think right now a lot of people still think of ordinals as they're Bitcoin NFTs, and NFTs are just JPEGs, right? And I think it's a lot more than that. And so an inscription is really an application. It's an app. So you're actually building apps, and with recursion, the apps aren't just limited to the single app. The apps can actually basically have composability. So you can actually, apps can call other apps, or code cannot call other code, basically.
Is this sort of like a open source code library database on ordinals?
And it's kind of like that too. So you can almost have because it is this ledger where you can store code, right, and reference other code. It's a bit like a kind of a decentralized GitHub, but it's more than that because you actually are running the code too. When the browser views, these inscriptions, it can just run them as apps. So it's like both the GitHub, decentralized GitHub, and like a decentralized, app store kind of thing, where you can run the apps. So
Essentially an app store on Bitcoin. That's amazing. So basically it just whatever our imagination can create.
well, it's a new thing, so it's not clear how all this will work together right now, and so that's also part of the excitement. Like what type of app is this that you write onto Bitcoin, and how how do you monetize? What's incentive for people to create these apps? Uh, these apps are digital artifacts. What does it mean for an app to be a digital artifact that also someone can own? So these are all kind of new things to explore.
That is pretty interesting, right? Like let's say some kind of app people create during the hackathon becomes widely used, and then it it calls on several inscriptions to complete the cycle, then all of a sudden those sats would probably be worth a lot of money, right?
Yeah, so that's not clear. What does that mean? Like, so let's say you make a really great app that's used by a lot of people on Bitcoin. What does it mean to own that? And also, what is this, like?
It's more like owning the art, it's like maybe
Yeah,
like it's more like the cultural significance of it.
perhaps, right? But maybe
So,
there's ways to
yeah,
monetize that more directly, or yeah, more ways like own art. But you can also fractionalize that with like parent-child collection. So you could um like for any given digital artifact, you could break it into many and let people own a piece of it. Things like that you could do with ordinals.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Do you have any specific wish list items? Like
For the
we'll
hackathon.
yeah, we'll put them up into like our hackathon Discord, right? So people like it'll be like, Danny's wish list items. Let's see if anybody
Okay,
like
yeah,
some.
I think of some, and
I think of
yeah,
some.
got it. Yeah.
All right, so we're coming up on time, and I want to open up the floor for a few questions before we check out at 10:30 Pacific time. So, what are your closing thoughts? And well, first of all, how do people get more involved with On-Chain Monkey, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Discord, so come by our Discord. You can, it's a community. We're very much about, well, our values are rise, respect, integrity, sustainability, and enrichment, and we're also very much about you know building building on Bitcoin, well, also Ethereum. It came from Ethereum, so both are great chains. So there's a lot still. I mean, it's still very early for all of this. I mean, NFTs really um like they got a slightly wider adoption in the last 2 years, but it's still most of the world doesn't own NFTs, and
Right.
and even just understanding the different types of NFTs, it's confusing for many people. So still early days.
All right. So for those of you guys listening on the Twitter Spaces, go ahead and just click on Danny's icon, and you can get to his Discord and other channels. All right, and then here's a general question for all the builders and aspiring founders out there, because I did a quick count. It's like it sounds like you did like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 startups or 6. I sort of lost count, to be honest, but
Yeah.
I mean most of them were successful, right? And uh and so the last 3 made money. So that's pretty significant. That's sort of like, to me, that's a sign where you're sort of seeing the pattern, or the science behind the art of a startup. So what are some advice or some words that that were hard earned over the years, and now you've distilled them into like a few sentences? Like what kind of advice do you want to give to people starting off building on Bitcoin right now?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, startups are a lot of work. It's very hard work. So you really want to, you know, and high risk. So you have to be passionate about it. So basically, you have to work on something you're very passionate about, and that will be the kind of your best chance of succeeding.
All right, great. I love that. So work on
Yeah.
something you're passionate about. That's the best chance of succeeding because
Yeah.
I'm
Well, also
originally from
surround yourself with
fantastic.
good people. I mean, some of the things it's about minimizing the risk I mentioned earlier, right? Like team risk is an important one you can minimize, right? So it's like, surround yourself with the best people, but you have to be passionate about your work. So there's a lot of
Okay,
work.
so let me see if I can like read between lines there. So when I hear being passionate about work, there's like I think there's two things that come to mind when I'm passionate about something. One, there's longevity, right? And even if the going gets tough, I'll still power through it. So there's that grit and determination. The second one is if I really love something, I'll be flexible with I'll roll with the punches. We don't know what's going to go on, but there's going to be new problems, and I'm going to have the mental flexibility to figure it out somehow, to get around it or go over it, go through it, whatever, depending on what type of problem is. So was that what you mean by
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
yeah, okay, all right, perfect. And then surrounding ourselves with other talented people, right? This
Yeah.
is sort of like that actually feeds into like the resilience and the grit and the flexibility, right? um yeah, we are the sum of the people we hang with, which on that point, by the way, guys, that's what the Bitcoin Startup Club does, is we find a bunch of talented people and mentors such as Danny himself, and we've created a virtuous cycle where, because we have the top mentors in Bitcoin, that we're attracting the top entrepreneurs, and it's a beautiful combination, right? Everyone enjoys each other, and we want to replicate that in a very miniature form on the Bitcoin Olympics, where co-founder matching and team matching is a huge component, right? And that's why we run everything through Discord, so people can meet each other and form teams. So even if you're a solo innovator, come join us, right? And as Danny said, it's part of it is how strong is your team? How strong is your team? And by the way, guys, this hackathon is like I would say it's a nonprofit, because the Bitcoin Startup Lab, we do not take any fees from the prizes. The prizes are completely undiluted, meaning that all the prizes is 100% from the prize sponsor directly to the winners, right? And we did this. We purposely did not charge for operations, because we wanted all those prizes to go out there, to go to builders, because we know how tough it is starting a startup or a new project is. And also, by having a bigger prize pool to go out to the contestants and builders, we're going to attract more people into Bitcoin. And the more people who build on Bitcoin, the more powerful and more successful or sustainable our Bitcoin economy becomes. So this is the underlying point I'm making here, is that this is a highly collaborative event between a lot of people who care about Bitcoin, including Danny, On-Chain Monkey, MetaGood, and me, and all of our other collaborators and prize sponsors, right? And the way to, and we need your help, right? We need your help, the audience, the contestants. The way to unlock these prize pools is by the number of contestants participating in the hackathon. So for every 200 active participants, we unlock 20% of the prize pools. So right now it's right over 100,000. So 20% means 200 people active, means $20,000 will be activated into the prize pool until we reach 1,000 contestants, and the complete prize pool is going to be unlocked. And prizes are coming in. The way you do that is you click on my icon, and you go to the top tweet there on the hackathon. Click on that, right? It'll show you, all right, these are the things you have to do. Join our Discord, reply, right? Reply to qualify for the prizes, and then retweet it, right? Because again, every 200 active contestants unlocks 20% of the prize pool. All right, so we need your help on that. Let's get going, and let's cut back to Danny for the Q&A. So Danny, I'm going to open up the floor here. Bobby, if anybody wants to ask questions in the Twitter Spaces, go ahead and raise your hand, and our co-host Bobby here at the Bitcoin Startup Lab is going to invite you up. Boom. Let's see. I wonder how many people have already went over to the Twitter video. Maybe that's why. I mean, we have like a pretty good turnout, but it doesn't look like people are raising their hands, so they might already be on the video feed. Danny. We might be able to save some time. Let's see. Okay, we got it. We got someone requested. This is Mitch Jackson. All right. Bobby, let him up. He's got a question. All right, Mitch, you're up.
Got to get the party started.
Yeah, get the party started.
So many questions. I'm a big fan of everything OCM's doing. Danny, thanks for sharing your thoughts and your opinions and your focus and your dreams in today's space. Really appreciate it. So my question is, for those of us that are relatively new in On-Chain Monkey and MetaGood, what would you suggest we focus on with this, building our businesses, leveraging the platform, while at the same time embracing the social good that OCM stands for? Where would you start if you came in today without your coding and tech background, but you wanted to be a part of the community moving forward? I'm curious to hear your mindset. And thanks for having me on, everyone.
Yeah, it's, why join the community? Like, how to get the most out of it, right? For OCM. And I think, we are, so the whole, like, this online community or open community, or through NFTs, I think it is pretty new, and it's like, what are the best ways to engage? And Mitch is a really great new community member in OCM, and started some voice chats in Discord. And I think actually Discord is still a very important tool for our community. So Discord in particular, because it is people who are very active in our community are there. And we also we've been doing periodic in real life meetings too. But I think actually, like, the thing with Mitch started with Discord voices is very powerful to really, like, share ideas around people. Like, we have a DAO that is quite well funded, that we're working on to basically empower our community to and also make impact, right? Like, our goal is to be impactful for our community and for the world. And it's in this new basically crypto powered world, right? Because like, NFTs actually are, like, the reason we started MetaGood was NFTs can be very powerful to organize communities to make an impact. So we're working on that in OCM to basically empower our diverse community, who have many different skills and value they bring, right? So they can help each other and unlock for their own businesses, and also for OCM overall. But first, it's just communication, right? Like, communicating with each other to understand who's in the community, what are they interested in doing, how can they help others, what help do other people need in our community, what are the important what's the mission of OCM, right? And what do we want to accomplish? Like, what does OCM as a whole want to accomplish in the next next quarter, in the next year? And yeah, at first it's just being able to communicate and share ideas, and a lot of that happens in our Discord right now. Yeah, and then Twitter for kind of more general announcements and updates. But these are kind of two important tools, and basically in this Web3 world, right? Discord and Twitter, and hopefully better tools and platforms will come out. And then there's also the crypto assets themselves, right? There's Ethereum, which people have to learn MetaMask and the marketplaces first. And now with Bitcoin, Ordinals, with a new protocol, what wallets do we even use, and what are the tools? So OCM MetaGood has been focused on building some of the infrastructure for Bitcoin in particular, and even for DAO voting, right? We have a DAO. How do we improve on the DAO voting? Also improve on security. So these are the things that are ongoing with OCM.
Super. Great questions and great answers. We have another speaker up here, Fitzy. you're on. And
Thank you, mate.
Yep.
Great space, by the way. Great questions. Danny, as always, great to listen to you speak about this stuff. So my question is this, and this might be a silly question, but I'm prepared to ask it. So recursion, from what I understand and what you said here a few times, has enabled Bitcoin to have this kind of on-chain decentralized app store, inverted commas, that will grow out the more people understand how to use it. And if I understand correctly, I think you mentioned previously and today that these 300 dimensions are therefore essentially apps, in inverted commas, in and of themselves. So if all of that is true, then my question is, what's the difference between, say, like an Apple or an Android app that we'd all know and can understand, and can be updated, which I think is a key distinction here. And so what's the difference between those in the traditional world and these, in inverted commas, apps on Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I think for these Bitcoin apps, Bitcoin has certain properties. I mean, the block space is only so big, and also block times are 10 minutes. So any sort of state change you want to make comes in 10-minute or longer intervals, and there's a cost every time you make a state change. You have to send a Bitcoin transaction, and fees will probably go up. So it'll really be for very probably it'll be certain types of apps, like maybe apps that don't have many state changes. Like there could be some games that are very successful on Bitcoin as well, where you're mostly playing the game, like people can play the games without making any changes, and maybe just a high score records a change, and that might just happen once a day. So that's one simple example, but people really haven't. I think it's still very new, so we'll see what the entrepreneurs come up with in terms of like what are the appropriate apps you build on Bitcoin versus doing it on other chains or layer twos, or not on because Bitcoin, the layer one is there's only so much, by design there's only so much space, so it should be for the very basic high value transactions. Albert, are you still there?
Yes. Yeah. Great questions, guys. Take advantage of this. We have about 15 minutes left. I see Darren up here. Hi, Darren. Good to see you.
Hey, Albert. Thanks for having me up. Great to hear from you, and super excited about the hackathon coming up, the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon, and everything that's happening with the startup lab.
Yeah, we have Danny to thank, right, for us meeting each other actually, and you joining the startup lab, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, like Danny came for those in the audience and did a session, along with all the other amazing mentors, and just the insights that he's providing, and for how to approach building products and services on Bitcoin has been invaluable, and for the teams and the other founders that are building. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, Johnny's quite the pioneer, and it's good to hear how pioneers think, because it also inspires us to innovate cool things, right? And yeah, I appreciate the all the praise, and if people on this call are sort of getting jealous, right, it's fine. You guys can just apply. we run these every few months, so not too late. But okay, enough of that. Darren, I think you might have had a question, right, coming up here.
Yeah, for Danny, as you think about the back half of the year, and maybe first quarter next year, and the new innovations that are coming from a protocol standpoint, there's obviously a lot with dimensions that's happening, and the OTM Genesis.
Yeah. So even like what to look out for like Ordinals protocol or developments. Well, I guess one thing would be, the protocol is, version, 0.8, right? Like getting to 1.0, it would be quite exciting. Like where, we collectively think, the Ordinals protocol is pretty well defined and it's a 1.0 product. And, it's not there yet. But, they're making good progress, and we saw more progress, in the recent weeks, after recursion came out and a number of updates. So one would be really, because people are also building protocols on top of the protocol, right? Like Ordinals protocol is the base protocol, but there's other things going on top, right? Like BRC20 was something that came out pretty early too. That got a lot of people excited. But Ordinals protocol is still kind of reaching the 1.0 stage. So I think that would be the exciting thing for Ordinals when 1.0 is reached, where kind of the core team and also all of the community thinks, well, this is a 1.0 product. Like, so I think one thing we'll see is when it becomes 1.0, we're not going to have cursed inscriptions anymore, right? Because the reason we had cursed inscription was kind of a patch, because it wasn't 1.0, and there are these inscriptions that are trying to do things that are kind of too advanced for the current or implementation of the protocol, I should say, right? So that's why we have cursed. That's why, like dimensions, it's cursed. So a few things I think we'll see in the next few weeks and maybe few months before we reach 1.0 will be like the parent-child collection provenance will be one. Also, bundle inscriptions will be another one where you can more scalably inscribe 1,000 inscriptions instead of doing it over 1,000 different commit and reveal transactions. You can do it over just a couple. Ideally, just one pair, or so. Those will be, I think, two great things to see in Ordinals, and also just wallet support. I think having Ledger supported, in a kind of secure and easy to use interface will be very important, because right now, everyone basically needs to run hot wallets for their Ordinals. So if you have a lot of value in that hot wallet, it's actually pretty scary. So getting Ledger support, also better indexes and APIs for people. I think that will be very valuable. So all these are being built right now, and should be coming out before the end of the year. And then of course next year, right, the halving is coming, right? So there are lots of strong tailwinds for Bitcoin overall. So combine that with all this that's happening with Bitcoin Ordinals. I think this is actually very, very exciting few months.
Yeah, speaking of tailwinds, we also saw in our applications this time there's a record number of people coming from Ethereum, Polygon, Solana. I mean, some of the teams that are part of the Bitcoin Startup Lab, they had even abandoned their MVPs or testnet projects to come rebuild on Bitcoin. So this is very different from a year ago, where 80% of the applicants were saying, "Hey, Albert, do the pre-accelerator in Ethereum or Polygon or something else," right? But this time it's like 99% of people that are applying, they wanted to build on Bitcoin. So, and this happened in like the last 2 months too, right? So it's definitely a lot of headwinds. Now,
tailwinds, a lot of tailwinds.
Sorry, you're right. Tailwinds, like helping us, pushing us forward, right? Thank you. Lots of tailwinds. Darren, did you have a follow-up question there?
No, that's super helpful. I mean, one of the things that's tough in building on Bitcoin is timing and trying not to get ahead of the market. And I think OCN's done an amazing job of that. And just being careful with not building stuff too fast that's going to be quickly kind of outdated or replaced by a different layer or a different protocol or something, I think is a risk and for that we've been discussing. So that's super helpful to just prioritize and take the long view for how we're rolling out different products.
Yeah, it was a great question.
Yeah.
Great answer.
And also when Ordinals Protocol gets to 1.0 status, I think that'll also help builders. Because right now there's still a lot of question marks on kind of when will something be supported and how exactly will be supported. And even like recursive inscriptions, right? We have one type now, which is the /content/inscription ID. But there'll be a few more types really. And so when those are kind of like ironed out and agreed on, it'll basically add more power to developers building on top of Ordinals.
Super. Yeah. All these things are right around the corner. So and with the Bitcoin halving, it's going to be incredible. All the opportunities. All right. So thanks for asking that question, Darren. And let's go to Hoodie. I think Hoodie came up as a speaker. Hoodie, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually Brian behind the Hoodie Club account. Thanks for having me up. Oh, thank you. And I just have a quick question for Danny that I thought I'd ask in the context of
It's muted right now for some reason. I can't hear the question.
You can't. Okay, hold on.
oh, can you hear me now?
Okay, now I hear you.
Okay. I'll
Okay,
go ahead,
go ahead, Brian. Go ahead and just repeat that about the fees. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So with the context of those increasing fees and also the the limited space and especially being like respectful to block space, I'm curious what you would say to projects that are maybe not prepared to to live in that world of high cost or don't see that what they're trying to create or go down the road of being belonging on that layer one Bitcoin. I wondered what advice you might give to startups, projects, companies that aren't prepared to kind of enter into that, but want to be involved with what's happening around Bitcoin and join the community and dive into offering whatever value they see as part of their project or business or whatever, but they just don't see it as like, we need to be on layer one. I'm curious what you'd say about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of things actually don't need to be on layer one, because right now we're in a time when the fees are still very low, so you can do actually a bunch of stuff on this layer one in terms of inscribing onto Bitcoin. So it is, I think, probably the next year is kind of exciting period to just do something that probably you can't do in the future at these prices, or these fee prices. But yeah, I think long term it's what are the things that the market will care about, and for the high fee market, that is, because there's going to be a high fee market, and I think it's like the ordinal inscriptions or the things that are being or the applications that are being built will be around high value assets. I think like $5 gaming assets doesn't make sense to be a Bitcoin ordinal. You theoretically do that today, but you won't be able to do that in the future. So the kind of the market for, if you're thinking about apps or things to build, it should be around high value assets versus like the $5 or even $50 gaming asset. Yeah, but you could do that today though, so that's kind of funny, like maybe fee arbitrage that people have today. So I guess if you're an artist, you could make art that takes a lot of file size today. So like in the next few months, you could be inscribing some of that. So that is a kind of a short-term opportunity for artists to inscribe their work right now.
Yeah, then you also mentioned recursion, right? How you guys did a 10K collection on under one block, right? So
and
that
so if you use generative code, right? Code can be very powerful, for building applications too, without using a lot of file space.
Yeah, I mean, when we do the math, that makes the cost of subscribing almost marginal.
Yeah, for certain things, but other things it doesn't work. Like if you want to make a video, like a movie, and stream a video of a movie off of Bitcoin, that won't work because that's
Right.
storing like one movie will take up a gigabyte of file storage, and that will cost a lot of money and doesn't make sense to do.
Yeah, doesn't make sense in layer one ordinals. Brian, do you have a follow-up questions?
No, I mean, I just wanted to point out that it really, gets back to that whatever context you're looking at, this lens of just sustainability fitting back into Rise, is so appropriate all the time. So thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
Super. So we're about up on time. I think Elijah has his hand up, and then there's Nomi. Maybe we just have time for one more. Elijah, you wanna try to squeeze in there right there before we check out?
All right. So my problem is that I'm from New York, and my problem is getting into the actual crypto in the first place. Like, long story short, the only way I could buy crypto is if I go on Webull and I fucking buy it like that. I can't get any. I can't set it up with MetaMask. I can't. It doesn't let me.
Yeah. So that's a question of how can you acquire, crypto or Bitcoin exchanges in the US. There are a number of them that work across all states, so you can buy off of Coinbase or others, Gemini.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, well, that was a quick
What
question.
about for altcoins?
Yeah, but it's funny. Many years ago, you could just go to Walmart and buy Bitcoin from the cash counter, but yeah, not as easy today. But there are rather you can't go to Walmart to do it, but you can, like these online exchanges like Gemini and Coinbase are there.
Okay, very cool. So I think we might have time for one really quick question. Nomi, is this fast? If it's fast, let's try to squeeze it in. Hi there.
Albert.
Hi there.
Hi. Just wondering, how can we onboard more people from Ethereum? Because I feel like, like all of us ordinal people understand that Bitcoin is much more like prestige blockchain. So interested to hear like your Albert and probably Danny's opinion and maybe someone else about like how to onboard people from Ethereum, because they still don't understand the differences. They still don't understand why like we're building right now on Bitcoin. So interested to hear.
I'll go first, Danny.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's definitely about education and kind of the pros and cons of each, because they are different chains. So it's, what do you want to like why would someone want to onboard onto Bitcoin? And I think for some things it makes sense to do Bitcoin. For some things it might make sense to do Ethereum. So it's just kind of teaching them the difference between the two chains. The account model versus UTXO model. Like UTXO, for people who onboard into crypto from Ethereum, the account model makes a lot of sense, right? That's how your bank account works. But the idea that this weird UTXO ledger model in Bitcoin is very confusing. So I think just first is just teaching people about Bitcoin and how it works. Really it's a simple system, but it is also very different from Ethereum, which seems more natural for someone, I guess, entering from the fiat world. So yeah, teaching them about this new Bitcoin ledger and how it's actually has great properties and good for certain things. So yeah, onboarding through education and like maybe a primer on the Bitcoin white paper. I mean, the Bitcoin white paper is actually not long, but it can, I guess, be hard to understand too. So maybe there's some like very like 101 Bitcoin white paper summary. Maybe that's something we could share with people. I'm not sure. I just tell people to read the Bitcoin white paper, but there might be an easier version of that to share to onboard onto Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's definitely about education. And speaking of which, Danny and a bunch of awesome mentors and organizations are backing the Bitcoin Startup Lab and the Hackathon Olympics. This is education ground zero. So if you want to bring more people on Ethereum, shield the Bitcoin Olympics. It's free. Again, this is a nonprofit for us. All the prize money, 100%, is going to all the contestants, right? And for the, of course, like to create a big enough incentive. So that's also why our main title sponsor donated $50,000, agnostics, for anyone building on Bitcoin, because they're from the Ethereum space and they want to make this hackathon in terms of prize money commensurate with Ethereum hackathons. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so, Nomi, invite more people, right? Invite, retweet, reply to that message. And the more people that mix with the front runners like Danny, right, and other mentors that we have, the more they'll become inspired, like we all have, and it'll start snowballing. Right? It's all about like that first 2 to 5% early adopters. Once we get them, then the other people that are their friends will onboard, and once you get to 20%, then it's then the tectonic shift has happened. Right. So right now we're in that first, I would say it's first like 1%, 1 to 2%. What do you think, Danny, in terms of like the adoption?
It's still quite early. Yeah.
It's still quite early. So, I mean, if they want to come to the Blue Ocean, you don't have to be as early as Danny when they just came over like the second day or, the first week. Ordinals was launched. It's still early days. I think Ordinals is still roughly, maybe not like almost 10% of the Ethereum NFT. I don't have that exact.
Oh no, it's much smaller actually, but things change very quickly. Like if you looked at Ethereum NFTs, it was only a matter of a few months where it was like, or rather, Ethereum NFTs were chugging along for years with no activity, but then just over a period of a few months, it suddenly became, very active, and I think Bitcoin will be similar in that. Right now we're in the low activity stage, but basically, the tailwinds that Albert was mentioning with Bitcoin having, and also just general more understanding of NFTs versus Bitcoin ordinals and digital artifacts. I think that shift will also happen pretty quickly. It could be just a few months before it suddenly changes. So, but yeah, it's like being prepared when that shift comes, which could happen, pretty much any day.
Yeah, it's about being prepared. And the thing is, like, we can't really predict the future, so the best time to prepare is now. And the way to do that one way is to have more people join the Bitcoin Olympics, because immediately it unlocks more prizes. As I mentioned, it's every 200 active contestants, we're unlocking 20% of the prize until we hit 1,000, and then 100% of prizes are unlocked. So this is a community-wide effort. The mentors, organizations, foundations, side chains, and even the contestants, we have to come together to do this, to make it sustainable. So shout out to everyone. Click on BTC Startup Lab, Twitter, or I guess X now, or my account, and just click in there and sign up, right? And thank you all for listening. On behalf of all the listeners, thank you so much, Danny, for sharing your time. And let me do a quick 2-minute checkout to let people know what's right around the corner. So today we have Danny Yang, CEO and co-founder of MetaGood, and On-Chain Monkey, serial entrepreneur, and Ordinals and Recursion pioneer, right? Check them out by clicking into Danny's account right here. And coming up, we have Aaron Redwing, who is the CEO and president of the newly formed Ordinals, Open Ordinals Institute, which is going to be spearheading some of those upgrades that Danny was talking about for Ordinals. And then we have Robin, who's a CEO of Liquidium, which is a graduate from our program, and they became the first ever Ordinals lending protocol. Use your Ordinals as collateral, get Bitcoin back, and the lender gets native Bitcoin back in terms of yield. So he's going to be coming up, sharing his origin story. And then, of course, Trevor Owens, which many of you know, he started the Ordinal show, and probably holds a record for most people attending an Ordinal show. He's going to come up. He's quite the serial entrepreneur himself, as well as a fund manager. So that origin story is going to be really fun. And then I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to mention one last one. And then Domo, who's the creator of BRC20. And then we have a lot more in store. And again, guys, we have almost 20 now who's selected. And these, so we need another 12-ish. So in the crowd, if you guys want to drop a note in here, suggest who we should bring up as one out of the 30 innovators, top innovators of Bitcoin in 2023. Let us know. We're open to that. And finally, this show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Startup Lab, a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and our media partners, Bitcoin Incorporated, which is a parent company of Bitcoin Magazine. They're the top media on Bitcoin right now, and then Crypto Slate, a crypto agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings of Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And again, a big thank you to all our teams and all the guest speakers that have come together to make this show possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Danny. And looking forward to next time. Stay tuned for tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thank you.